And our viewers on YouTube. We welcome you at the GCIC Baraza, the Government Citizen Interaction Center. And I am your host, Magezi Chirinzo, who will be taking you through the conversation we are having today. If you ask an average Ugandan, if you say Uganda Development and say Adon, they are like the Adon Bank. So many Ugandans don't know about Uganda Development Coperation. And when you look at its work, it's a lot of work. So to discuss what UDC is, how it came about, what its mandate, its challenges, and its future plans, we are hosting the Executive Director himself, Dr. Birungi Patrick, who is going to take us through what UDC does, what are some of its successes as a developing country, Uganda, what does an investment arm of government face, and what are the future plans for Uganda Development Coperation. Doctor, you are welcome. You can greet our listeners and our viewers on YouTube, and then tell us about UDC.
Thank you very much. My name is Patrick Birungi, as you have said. I work as the Executive Director here at Uganda Development Coperation. What is UDC? I always tell people that UDC is a very old but very new institution. It's a very old institution because it first appeared on the scene in 1952. So in 1952, UDC was established by an act of parliament then, and its core mandate is really to catalyze industrial development at that time.
That is even before independence?
Before independence.
Oh, right, yeah.
At that time, we still had our colonial government in power. So it was established, two institutions were established at that time. That is Uganda Development Coperation and Uganda Electricity Board. Now, the two had a close relationship. The Uganda Electricity Company at that time was meant to supervise the construction of the Owen Falls Dam. But then they realized that for them to do the Owen Falls Dam, they needed companies that would supply cement to the construction. And therefore, UDC came in to establish these companies. And at that time, the Uganda cement companies were established. That is the current day Tororo Cement Factory and Hima Cement Factory in Kasese. Now, the idea was to have a company that can work with the private sector to support the production of cement to supply the Owen Falls Dam. But the mandate was much bigger, so it was to catalyze industrial development at the time, and therefore, and that was its core mandate. But the other core mandate at that time was to do research in industrial development and mineral potentialities. So that was the UDC that was established in 1952. Fast forward by 1970, UDC was the center of the economy in Uganda. At that time, it was the second largest employer to public service. It was employing 24,000 people by 1970. That was a big number then. On top of that, it was contributing 33% of the total government revenue. So it was really at the center.
Yeah, that's quite big. 30%, that's quite big.
30% of the national revenue. It had 38 subsidiaries and 19 associated companies. Subsidiaries are where you own more than 50%, where associated companies you own less than 50%. if there is any industry that was established around that time, most likely UDC had a hand in that. It was in the hospitality sector, for example.
All these hotels, Mountains of the Moon.
We had, so in the hospitality sector, we had Uganda Hotels.
Uganda Hotels, yes.
Uganda Hotels owned all the hotels. Mountains of the Moon, White Horse Inn in Kabale. You go to Acholi Inn, Soroti Inn, Moroto Inn, across the whole country. So all the Masinde Hotel and others. So all these hotels were established by UDC that time as a way of boosting the hospitality industry. It was also in the banking sector. DFCU was established partly by UDC, what we know as DFCU, Development Finance Company of Uganda. The Uganda Development Bank was first established by UDC as Uganda Bank in the 60s as well. It was also in the textile sector. If you've heard of Nyaitil, which we still have today.
Nyaitil, I've heard of that.
Nyanza Textile.
Nyanza Textile, yes.
It was established by UDC. If you've heard of UGIL, which is Uganda Government Industries Limited, it was established by UDC. If you've heard companies like the Uganda Asian Bags, it was established by UDC at that time. If you've heard of the Uganda Spinning Mill in Ilira, it was also established by UDC.
At that time, whenever they would establish, would UDC stay with the hand in there, or it would establish and then move on?
No, it would establish and remain a key actor.
A key actor, okay.
In terms of setting governance rules, in terms of monitoring, and making sure that business is going well. So it was a very key actor, central actor in that area. It was also in real estate, like Uganda Consolidated Properties Limited. You might have heard of that. Uganda Dev Properties and others. In agriculture sector, it had companies like Agriculture Enterprises Limited. Agriculture Enterprises Limited owned most of the tea processing factories in Western Uganda, from Mabale to Kiarusozi to Kiko to Munowa to Mpanga. You go up to Igara and continue up to Kayonza. So it owned it started all those facilities there. And agriculture enterprises. It had the Uganda Grain Milling Company Limited. It had the one for fish called Toughmark. It had agriculture livestock industries, which owned most of the ranches across the country. So on and so forth. East African distilleries, Uganda meat packers, all these institutions were established by UDC. So it was the center of the. It was in mining, a key stake in Kilembe mines. Like I said earlier, Uganda Cement Industries, which was Tororo and Hima, and so on and so forth. So there were so many other investments. But it was also in the metal subsector, Uganda Steel Corporation in Jinja. It was privatized, names changed, but yes, it still exists.
So the stamp of UDC still exists in Uganda?
It still exists. The footsteps are still there. The Chillington tool, it used to make hand hose. So quite a number of industries were established at that time by UDC. And that was its core role. That was its core mandate at that time. Come to the 70s, during Idi Amin's time, a lot of changes happened. The government wanted to nationalize a lot of private sector businesses.
Yes.
So all these businesses were brought into UDC. But then thereafter, the country was plunged into war. And the wars that followed killed all the basic infrastructure for doing business. So these companies were doing business.
Yeah.
So from the mid-70s to the mid-80s,
it was
a downhill situation. So when the Washington consensus came with an agenda to privatize, it found fertile ground.
That's for sure.
Because these companies were doing very badly. They were a problem to the treasury, and therefore they were the first to be attacked and sold off. So most of all these companies were actually privatized. So when they were privatized in the early 90s, in 1998, UDC was wound up.
Basically, it shut down.
So it shut down.
It was the main shareholder.
It was the main shareholder, and if your companies have been wound out, so what do you exist to do?
Sure.
So when it was wound out in the early 2000s, government kept feeling the pinch that there is a missing link that used to be there
in the market.
In the market.
Yes.
Government wants to do something, they didn't have a mechanism of doing it to support the private sector. The original idea of thinking that the private sector will automatically be self-sufficient,
manufacture whatever.
It didn't happen. So government hand was missing. Countries that kept the government hand, like the Asian tigers, were moving faster at that time. Us who closed off were moving a little slower. And therefore, the discussion to re-establish UDC started thereafter. And in 2008-2009, a company was established, Uganda Development Company Limited. So as a way of filling this gap, fully owned by government, established under the Companies Act. But the discussions continued because of the need to establish the corporation with its own mandate and law. So the current UDC you're speaking to is a UDC established in 2016 by the UDC Act Cap 208. UDC Act of 2016 Cap 208.
That's an act of parliament?
An act of parliament. So that's why I say UDC is old but new. So the story I've told you is the old UDC. Now
we are speaking to the new.
Now we are speaking to the new, which is established in 2016. It was established to facilitate industrial and economic development in the country. Now that mandate again is very broad. Industrial, yes, that is a little more specific on industries. Yes. But when you talk about economic development, it means anything can lead, that leads to economic development. Yes. But the Act also gives us four objectives. The first objective is really on establishment of subsidiary and associated companies. The same as the first objective for UDC of 1952. So we establish subsidiary and associated companies. Like I mentioned, subsidiary is where we have more than 50% and associated is where we have less than 50%. That is the shall do. The other shall do is again undertake research in industrial development. So again, research in industrial development is a core mandate of UDC. Then the law gave us two May objectives that you may participate in PPPs.
These are
public-private partnerships. And then the other one is you may finance PPPs. So we have 4 objectives that establish us as UDC under the law. When we got this, the first thing was to do a strategic plan. So what are our key objectives? Because we are now new, establishing afresh, our objective number 1, therefore, is to strengthen our capacity at institutional building, because the other one was not there completely.
Yeah.
So now we are building the institution as a new institution. Also to leverage partnerships and networks, and I will tell you later on the partnerships and networks that we have leveraged on or we are leveraging on in order to optimize resources. The third, which is our core mandate, is again about establishing sustainable investments. Sustainable means that do a project, do an investment that will make money and be able to sustain itself. So our mandate is not to make those huge profits, but our mandate is really to catalyze development. Yeah. To your earlier question, our mandate now is if we establish with you and we feel you are now capable of standing alone, you buy us at market rate, you move on, I use those resources to go and establish with someone else.
Sure.
So once we establish and we feel you're okay,
you have gained enough.
You have gained enough experience and knowledge and capital, then you
can say, okay,
yeah, buy us out, and then we move on and go and help someone else.
Actually, yes. I thought you insist on staying and
no, we do not insist on staying.
And also
but we also don't want to start you and leave you limping.
Yeah.
So we want to establish you with you, and we leave you when you are stabilized and able to move
alone
without our.
Okay.
So between 2019, by June 2019, we had only one functional or operational project, and that is Kalangala Infrastructure Services. You might have gone to Kalangala if you've used Bukakata, or you've gone with your vehicle to Kalangala, most likely you have used our ferries in Bukakata. When you reached Kalangala and you switched on electricity, then you are using our electricity that we supply there. Or if you switched on a tap to bathe, then you use the water that we supply. So I don't know what I'm going to be saying soon, but we are the umeme of Kalangala.
I was going to ask you that in considering this, like for example, water, do you liaise with the national water, or that's completely?
For Kalangala, we are the umeme, we are the national water, but we are also the UNRA because we provide the infrastructure for crossing to Kalangala. Yes. So that was the only project that was running at the time. But today we are talking about 18 more projects.
Within Kalangala itself?
No, within the whole country.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are talking about 18 projects right now. Some of them are in agriculture. So agriculture, agro-processing or value addition is one of our core areas. The other is in infrastructure, services and infrastructure development. I will come back to services and infrastructure. And the other one is in mineral value addition. But we have now introduced, with the coming of COVID, we introduced some interventions to support the health subsector. I will talk to them about that later. Let me start with the hospitality industry, which is the service sector. We the most recently launched Speak Resort Convention Center that hosted NAM.
That's Munyonyo.
Munyonyo. In Munyonyo, we own 50% stake. The Hotel Down, which is the Commonwealth Resort, on behalf of government, we hold the 25% stake. We own the asset where Serena Kampala sits today. So we own that facility as well. Concession to TPS that runs the Serena brands. So this hotel is being run by another professional brand, Serena. But the asset, we own it.
It belongs to UTC.
We have a 49% stake through Nile Hotel, our company in Igongo, in Baraza. So we have invested in the hospitality sector, and we are continuing to think through where next. So very soon we'll be investing in a hotel in Hoima, next to the airport, the new airport of Kabale.
Maybe another new hotel?
Yes, we are going to be constructing a 4-star hotel there.
That's good news. And
through Nile Hotel, our investee company. And we will also be doing a facility in Queen Elizabeth National Park, high-end accommodation, luxury accommodation there as well, around Lake Katwe. So we are mapping out to see what other facilities we can do in that area. In infrastructure, I've already mentioned the infrastructure we provide for Kalangala, but we have also realized that the country realized that more than 90% of road construction works, for example, in Uganda, is done by foreign companies.
Foreign companies, that's sure.
And in an effort to reduce that, we have joined with a local company called Baker Technical Services, and we've built their capacity, and government has given us business. So today we are doing Busunju Hoima Road, Busunju Kiboga Hoima Road. It's under construction. We're also doing Matuga Kapeka Road without local construction company. Yes.
The Ugandan name.
Baker Technical Services. So we're doing Matuga Kapeka Road. And then we've also signed an agreement with government to do Mbale Vuvolo Mbale Road. It's a ring road. But we are having other projects which are coming on board, including Kampala Gayaza Kalaji Road. We're also going to be doing another road around Wikwe. But most importantly, we're also signing an agreement soon to do, under that company, to do an airport in Kidepo. So we want to build local capacity in the construction industry so that this road infrastructure can be done locally. So if there's anything we learned from COVID, is that we need to be self-sufficient.
These foreigners can just pack their bags and go.
They can pack, and there is no capacity.
There's no capacity.
Yeah. So we need to promote that more. We are continuing to work with this company to make sure that we improve that capacity. I think on infrastructure and hospitality, that's what we are doing. The other projects are mainly in agro-processing or agricultural value addition.
Value addition, yes.
We are into tea processing. Save for the challenge we had in the international tea market collapsing recently, we had entered tea processing very seriously. We had invested in a Mabale tea factory in Kyenjojo district. We had invested in Mpanga Tea Factory in Kabarole district. We had invested in Kayonza tea processing in Kanungu district. And we had also supported the investment of Kigezi Highland Tea Company in Kabale and Kisoro. So there's one factory in Kabale, the other processing facility or factory is in Kisoro. So we've invested in those facilities as well. In fruit processing, we have Soroti Fruit Factory in Teso sub-region in Soroti, and we are soon opening up another one mid next year, maybe around May next year. We'll be opening up another factory in Yumbe for processing mango.
Yumbe district.
Yumbe district, yeah.
Fruits.
Yeah.
Fruit processing.
For fruit processing.
Okay.
Other facilities are coming on board, like Luero. We also have a fruit factory there, and in Noya we're also planning a fruit factory there. In Noya, we also have a facility that processes cassava into ethanol for cooking. From cassava to ethanol for cooking.
Ethanol, that's a cooking oil.
Cooking fuel. So we want to change, we want to shift mindset from biomass-based cooking as charcoal and firewood into ethanol, so that ethanol cooks just like gas. So that one has started. We've been exporting most of ethanol to Kenya because for them they are ahead of us in terms of technology movement in cooking.
They have the equipment.
They have the ethanol stoves and so on. Yes. We are also assembling ethanol stoves in Noya. So we sell you the stove, we sell you the fuel as well. And then that is something we are beginning to market seriously.
So that means if I got a stove now, I can get some ethanol from...
yeah, we can even get your stove, we can even get you the ethanol.
Like now?
As of now.
Oh, that's good.
So we can get your stove, we can get you ethanol. We have a depot in Uma Showground, so it's our selling point for now. But we are learning now to open up and start distributing through a company called Bukona Agro Processors.
That is UDC generated purely, or you are also?
We are also with the private sector.
Yeah, we are partnering with the private sector.
Yeah, we partner with the private sector. In Usoga, we have sub-region in the district of Luka. We have Mutuma commercial agencies. We get cotton and turn the cotton into cotton wool for medical use. And we have Atiak sugar in Atiak that we are working on currently, but we are also developing another project around the same, not the same area, but in the other part of Amuru. It's going to be called Amuru Sugar Limited, together with the private sector. In this case, we shall be together with the Madvanis. So we are moving slowly but sure to go back to that center of economic growth. In terms of results, we're also getting already some results. So we are spending, our companies are spending more than 30 billion to buy local raw materials. One of our core principles is that we must have local raw materials. We are employing about 4,192 people in our facilities, in these industries where we have co-invested. We are also import saving. For example, I forgot to talk about it. We have a facility that manufactures gloves, surgical gloves, and we are co-investors there with the private sector. And our target by next year is to import substitute a total of about 64 billion Uganda shillings. using that company. So we thank government, because government has also given us a deal for market. Says every glove you'll produce we shall consume. So we are import substituting, but we're also exporting teas and therefore improving on our trade balance. So our second core principle is improving the trade balance of the country as well. Our third core principle is you work with the local entrepreneurs. Once you work with the local entrepreneurs, establish them and give them capacity to continue. So we are also doing that with the hope that the local entrepreneurs will sustain these businesses and be able to push the country to higher heights. So basically, that is what we are, and that's what we have done.
Currently, UDC is supervised under which government?
Yeah, the Uganda Development Coperation is under the Ministry of Trade and Industry and Cooperative. So our supervising ministry is Trade, Industry and Cooperatives at the moment. At the beginning, you talked about whether there are any challenges
Yes.
that we face as an institution in doing our work. Yes, we do face quite a number of challenges. First, you're working with the private sector, but you are slow because of government bureaucracies. So I have to get some approvals to do this, but the private sector makes a decision there and then, which you may not be able to make.
Yes. And
you have very many supervisors. So the public sector bureaucracy is really sometimes pulls us a bit slow.
It's a bit slow. It frustrates your private partners.
The speed, it frustrates the private partners. They will come back and say, you are slow. Yes, we are slow, but that's the nature of how we established. Yeah. So that is one of our biggest challenges that we have. Our second challenge is access to working capital or investment capital that we may need. Capitalization of UDC is one of the challenges. So we are trying to see how can we create special funds for financing UDC and UDC investments, and also having a fund where you have full control. Even if government borrowed for us from other institutions, other development institutions, say $200 million, it will still be okay because we have now the resources we can manage ourselves.
Does UDC keep, for example, because if you are partnering with the other, especially private sector, some of them make some profit. Let's assume, say, Munyonyo resort. If it made a profit, UDC gets its share. Does UDC retain it, or it first sends it to the Ministry of Trade, and then they decide what to bring back?
No. We work because this is an investment arm of government. So when we get dividends from any of our investee companies, the law allows us to redeploy those dividends. Yeah, okay. We do not send these dividends to
after all, you still need more
consolidated fund.
Money,
no,
so
we don't.
It's better to redeploy.
Yeah, we redeploy, but there are approval processes that are required. Yeah, so we do not send there. So capitalization is the second key question. We are heavily dependent on government to finance, but we are trying to find ways around the capitalization question as well, working closely with the Ministry of Finance. So those are our major challenges that we face as an institution.
Then at least you have given us the pluses, which is good. That the challenges, I think, for them, they are government related. Government is, as we said, it's a bureaucratic process. So some of the challenges are you can't do much about it.
You can't do much.
So you just have to keep handling one by one.
Yeah, well, that's what the laws say. So you follow the laws.
It's follow the law
and procedures.
How do you, for example, select a private sector entity to work with? Do they come to you? Do you go to the market and see?
We have, let me say, 3 major ways through which projects come in. The first is walk-in. So the private sector that needs support in a particular area, they bring it. They bring their proposals. Then later on our side, we assess their strategic importance. Because UDC is not like a commercial bank, so it intervenes only in key strategic areas. Okay? So you bring in your project and we assess it. So that is one way through which we've got projects. The other way is directives of either cabinet or the president.
Yes.
Because at that level, at cabinet level, they drive the policy agenda for the country. So once they identify a key need and they come and say, we want you to get engaged this way. So we normally consider those kind of initiatives or projects. Now, for example, there can be a war between Ukraine and Russia that makes wheat a scarce commodity. And the government comes and says, UDC, we want you to go in with this private sector to have large-scale production of wheat and for export, for local consumption and exports. We'll definitely pick up that and run with that. So we get directives as well. The third way is we internally generated projects. We also generate our own projects. We are now in the process, for example, of generating a project on beef processing. We've done all the studies and so on as a way of trying to see whether we can have a stronger beef industry and be able to export to other countries.
I should book an appointment with you on the beef part. I've always had this idea that people of those days, they used to have meat, dried meat, and move with it for months. Now, today, when we have better technology,
we cannot.
So that's an interesting idea, especially as I've been thinking about it.
Yeah.
How can people at that time, do a better job with the meat than us?
Than ourselves.
So if you have done some other, new studies, I better come and pay you a visit and learn more.
Please.
Now, when you partner with the private sector, do you insist on the local people to be employed there? Because sometimes these guys can come from out there, and they put up all sorts of excuses. We need better people who know this and that, and then they end up with majority staff coming from out of the country. Do you also have a quota where you say, no, if we are going to partner with you, we shall also have this number of Ugandans?
We don't have a quota per se, but one of our key core objectives is creation of direct and indirect jobs. So if that is my core objective, to create those kind of jobs, I can never achieve them if I don't employ Ugandans.
Yeah, that's true.
So in every entity, because we are equity partners, we are also on the governance. We sit on the boards. Sometimes we influence the appointment of management as well. So where it's necessary. So in that case, in that process, we always try to influence to make sure that there is local employment. Luckily, in most of our establishments, most of them are employing local partners. There are some who may be employing others, but most of our establishments have local partners. Yeah.
Okay. Then you spoke of the investments you have done in tea. I could see they are real. It's a wide investment portfolio. And you also spoke of the reality that happened recently, the prices, global prices having issues. In those circumstances, how do you deal with your farmer partners, for example, when something like that happens? Because you saw people in Shane cutting tea, uprooting it. So, as a partner with them, how do you go to them and sympathize with them, and then somehow economically either compensate them, or how do you go about some of that circumstances like that?
In this case, our contribution has been first, what is the core problem? The core problem is market. Can you get alternative market? So we've been supporting the tea association members to go and look for alternative markets for tea. We went to Dubai and we got an alternative market for tea. So very soon we'll be exporting direct without going through Mombasa auction. So that has been quite supportive for the sector, and it's going to turn around the thinking in the sector. Originally, we knew all our tea must go through Mombasa. That should end soon.
And it would be very hard to blame you because Americans have a saying that when something is not broken, don't fix it. So I think initially, because tea was making good money in Mombasa, there was no incentive of looking for an alternative. That disaster happens.
Yeah,
to wake everybody up. It's like, what?
That's correct.
We are being held hostage here. Yet we can get another.
That's correct.
So that was also.
The second thing we've done is to be the representative of those people you're talking about, the farmers, the factories, and so on, in the government. So we've been engaging with our leaders in the government. We've engaged up to cabinet level. We developed a cabinet paper through my minister. It was presented to cabinet. So that policymakers also make decisions well knowing what is happening on the ground. So we did that, and we've been engaging in all meetings, different meetings. So we're also playing, let me call it an advocacy role for the private sector in government, where they are not sometimes. Sometimes they can call a meeting one day or 30 minutes, you can't drive from very far. But we also do that on behalf of our partners in the business. Yeah.
Now, I'm a little bit curious, or worried, let me say. There is a fruit factory in Soweto already. As if you said you are going to start 2 in northern Uganda, and then 1 in West Nile.
No, in Ruwera.
That's Yumbe district.
Okay, there's Yumbe and Noya and Ruwera.
And Ruwera, actually. Has Uganda have those fruits? Because the one of sort was mango, unless others are other fruits, but as if it was the one of sort was operating not to maximum. Now, if you put in almost another 4, won't we have the same problem we have had with the sugar, especially in Musoga area where there's so many factories, and the sugar may not be there now. It's even now the sugar cane even the prices are so low. Farmers are they're disoriented, disorganized. Won't our fruit sector have issues of that nature?
In basic economics, we have 2 schools of thought. One, which talks about demand-driven. So a factory is demanded because of the availability of fruits.
Yes.
The second school of thought, which is called Say's law, for it is supply that drives, meaning give the factory, the fruits will come.
Okay.
To the contrary, and I want to make this clear, to the contrary, in the Teso sub-region today, in a good fruit season like we are likely to have this season now that has started, the factory is very small. It can only consume about 10% of the fruits produced in the region. So it's very small. It's a small factory given the fruits that are produced there.
So could the problem be us Ugandans who are not doing the farming?
The farming?
Because
like I'm saying in Teso, the problem is us who are not doing factories. In Sorota alone, there are more fruits than the factory can take.
Yeah. Sure.
The factory can only process 10%. There's a 90%.
That's one region only.
That's one region only. But they are seasonal. So the season is like, it has started now in October, November, it ends in December, January. So that season is, you consume only 10%. The same happens in Acholi sub-region. And the same happens in West Nile as well. So these factories, especially the one of Noya and the one of Yumbe, will be mango processing. But the one of Soroti does mango and oranges as well. So, and the one planned for Wero is largely for pineapple. So they are different fruits, but also backed by strong feasibility studies on viability based on supply of fruits.
Before we leave Teso region, a local there, a friend of mine was telling me there was, I think, a meat processing either plant or a roofer of some sort. Was it also a UDC done?
It was a UDC established at that time, but it was privatized also.
It was privatized.
It's now in the hands of the private sector.
They should have left some of these things to this, because it seems the private sector didn't even do a good job.
They didn't pick it up.
Pick it up.
So, yeah.
And then you wonder why they bought it, why they just leave it.
Yeah.
Now, Atiak sugar. In the public domain, people think that factor is not worth it. Maybe partly because we haven't seen packets of Atiak sugar. Are they there, first of all, are they there in the supermarket?
They were there, they are not there today.
What happened?
I think Atiak sugar is not given a fair discussion.
That most likely is true.
The time the private sector went to Atiak was immediately, short time after the war. And if you heard of the Atiak massacre,
yes,
that area specifically was a war zone for most of the time. That's why when we talk about Atiak sugar, we say from battlefields to green fields. Because there used to be war fields to now green gardens. To green fields that can make money for this country. Before then, there used to be a lot of incursions of armed people from South Sudan. With the establishment of Atiak sugar infrastructure there, that has disappeared. Now, first is to look at the bigger vision of this facility. The bigger vision is to produce sugar, employ thousands and thousands of Ugandans in there. So the beginning, the thought was government is going to provide the gardens, you provide the factory. So we worked with the private sector to provide the factory, government through NADS and Ministry of Agriculture to provide the gardens, meaning that the agriculture bit was to be provided by the public sector. And true to that, they established very good gardens
Yes.
of cane. But a number of things happened. One, immediately we launched in October 2022, the gardens caught fire. So the factory works 1,650 tons crushed per day. It produced the sugar. The sugar was distributed locally, but also in the international market. It was even exported to Kenya. But when the fire came and they gutted most of the garden side, business went.
Because those are the local materials that are needed.
Those are the local materials. about 7,500 acres.
That's a lot of
That's a lot of sugarcane were burnt down. So just go and see the plot where you sleep, maybe is 0.25 of an acre, or a 0.15 of an acre. Or maybe you sleep on an acre.
Yes.
Do the math of 7,500 acres, what it looks like. Hills and hills, villages and villages, sub-counties and sub-counties, getting burnt at once by wildfire. So that created insufficiency in raw material to the factory.
Yes.
So the struggle today is to reestablish the farming side, go back and reestablish the farming side, that is, have the gardens for enough to supply the factory. So we are working on that, and that has been our biggest challenge today. But once those gardens are funded fully and up and running, we'll not look back again.
The issue with the local farmers, local sugarcane farmers in the north, having conflicts here, conflicts there, those were resolved completely.
We don't have issues with the local farmers.
So it was just the fire that disorganized
the fires that disorganized the factory.
That's now that the dry season in northern Uganda is normally very, very harsh.
Very harsh.
I don't know which mechanism you are going to put that to make sure that it don't.
Mechanisms have been put in place already in terms of planning the gardens, where we had an 11-meter road area which works as a fire line between blocks of cane, has been expanded to 21. So it becomes very difficult for fire to cross from one block to another. Where we need fire trucks, we've also got fire trucks specifically to manage that. But also, in addition to that, we are now going to have irrigated gardens. So when there is a fire, you release the irrigation machines to move around, pouring water down. So that way, with these kind of systems, I think we shall address the fire question.
Thank you, Dr. Birungi, Dr. Birungi Patrick, the ED at Uganda Development Coperation, for the conversation you have had with us. And now we are going to shift to the live conversation on X Spaces at GCIC, and those who are on YouTube, you can join us live as we continue the conversation. Be free to come in, ask questions, contribute where you see things have gone well. Ask the ED where you think they need to improve, and if you're allowed to complain if you want. But thank you so much, and let's wait for the public to join us, and then we'll continue the conversation. Thank you very much.
We'll be available to join the public and to answer the questions of the public on any of the subject matter that we have competencies in, especially our investments.
As the ED Uganda Development Coperation, you have a message for our holiday makers during this long holiday coming, this Christmas, Happy New Year.
Dear Ugandans, as we celebrate this festive season, I extend my warmest Christmas wishes to you and your loved ones. This is a time for joy and reflection and unity, a chance to appreciate the strides that we have made together in driving Uganda's industrial growth. As Uganda Development Coperation, we are committed to fostering sustainable investments and empowering industries that uplift the country. Together, we are building a brighter and prosperous Uganda. May this Christmas season bring you peace, happiness, renewed hope for the year ahead. Let us step in 2025 with resilience and determination to achieve even greater milestones. Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year.